Hello again and welcome back for another of Claire's Tuesday classes. I'm Claire and as usual I'm joined by the fabulous moderator Anna, who will be on question duty. So just as a reminder, we work for a social enterprise called Matanon Sustaining Now, and we want to quench your thirst for sustainability science and show you how the earth, our home, works and encourage you to protect it. Now this week I have a super cool session for you on the cryosphere. It's called Incredible Ice, and it really is, and I'm going to tell you why. In fact, if you really enjoy it and want to learn more after today's session, you can go straight onto our website and download our brand new fun book, which is being launched today. It's called The Cryosphere Matters. Thank you to the sponsorship and support we have received from Junior Junction to make this possible. So, little poll question for you. Who has ever seen the snow? It snowed a lot last year around March time. Do you remember? Maybe some of you have even been lucky enough to go skiing. Snow is brilliant fun and a bit of a novelty for us here in the UK, as it doesn't snow that often. The thing is, it melts after a few days and is forgotten about very quickly. Now, there are places, however, on this amazing planet of ours where the snow and ice doesn't melt. It stays frozen for hundreds of thousands of years in some places, even covering entire mountain ranges. It's called the cryosphere because the Greek word for ice is cryos, you can see here, and it consists of all the frozen water on planet Earth. So where is it? I think most of you would be able to say that it's at the North and South poles. I've got my globe here. So here's the Arctic up here, and here is the Antarctic down here. But it's more than that. It includes all the glaciers that are found in high mountain ranges and ice peaks, of which there are many. You have a look at this map here, you can see that they're all over the place. So this is actually a page from our Cryosphere Fun book, and you can download it, like I say, after the presentation, and you can have a go and see if you can identify all the different mountain ranges around the world where you can find glaciers and snowy ice-capped mountains. So let's have a look now at our poll. Oh, we've got quite a few votes. So if I show you the results in the video, you can see that most of you have seen snow lots of times and you absolutely love it. So well done. That's really great. Now, what are we doing? So now the polar regions, if I show you here, are really different to the rest of the planet. And they're really interesting. One of the main reasons is because of their position and how they receive energy from the sun. So you can see here, here's the sun, and as the sun hits the earth, you can see it gets a lot of energy around the equator, and that's where you find a lot of animals and plants, biodiversity, huge rainforests, because they're receiving a lot of the sun's energy. And then as you get further north and further south, the sun's rays are spread out over a wider area, so they're just not receiving the same amount of energy. I can show you actually on my globe. So if I just scoot back a bit, you can see if I shine my torch here, you can see that the light is being reflected heavily off the equator, which is the black line in the middle of the globe. And actually up at the north, there's not receiving that much light at all. And at the south, again, it doesn't look quite as bright. Now, as the sun is actually travelling around, as the Earth is travelling around the sun, it tilts, it kind of wobbles, and that's how you get seasons. Now, when the sun is on the Earth and it's tilted like this, the Antarctic, right at the bottom of the globe, is getting all the sunlight. But as it tilts further like this, then you find that the Arctic is getting the sunlight and the Antarctic is in darkness. So the Earth tilts and wobbles as it goes around the sun. So whilst the Arctic is in darkness, it's their winter, and they don't see the sun for 6 months. And when the Antarctic is in the winter and the Arctic is in their summer, they don't see the sun for 6 months. So it makes it a really cold and really inhospitable place. Now I've got another, I'll just show you here. So, I've got another poll question for you here. The question is, if any of you know, what is the coldest temperature ever recorded on the Earth? Okay, so there's the question popping up for you, so you can answer that. So the ice in the cryosphere is really, really interesting. At first glance, it looks just like unending fields of ice, just white, but it's not just frozen in one place and non-changing. A lot of it is in constant flux and moving, even if it's too slow to see. Now take the sea ice on the Arctic Ocean. It melts and refreezes seasonally. So sometimes this layer of ice here on the Arctic Ocean will be a lot smaller, and then in the winter it will start to freeze and get larger. And then all of the countries here around the Arctic Circle, these 8 countries, are covered in ice sheets. There's a big ice sheet on Greenland, they're covered in glaciers, covered in permafrost, which I'll explain a little bit more about later. Now, in the Antarctic, the situation is reversed, and the polar region is covered in a giant landmass. It's a continent in its own right, and it's surrounded by the Southern Ocean and has huge ice shelves floating in the ocean, which expand and contract with the seasons. So here we have land covered in a huge ice sheet, and around it in the ocean, in the winter, this becomes covered in ice as well. Did you know that the Antarctic is the coldest and windiest place on Earth and is classed as a frozen desert? It's because the atmosphere is so dry that it can't actually have any precipitation, so it's really interesting. Now let's have a look at these poll results. Okay, we've got quite a few answers coming in, and actually the answer was C, minus 90 degrees centigrade, which is really incredibly cold. They recorded that temperature in 1983 in Antarctica, and the scientists who recorded that temperature, they actually said it felt really unearthly. They felt like they would be on another planet because it was that cold. So why is the cryosphere so important to life here on Earth? There are some surprising reasons which you may not have considered before. Firstly, because of all the white that is present on the top of the Earth, it provides a high albedo. Now, don't worry, the word albedo, I understand, sounds a bit scary and very scientific, but I'm going to explain it to you. Right. Now, this is going to start to look like a scary physics lesson. I promise you it's not. It's a really simple concept, but we have to understand it to understand why the cryosphere is so important to life on Earth. So the albedo is the amount of light or sun's radiation which is reflected from an object's surface. Okay, so all that means is that a lot of the sun's radiation here is being reflected off of ice, and only a small amount is being absorbed. And here with the clouds, you can see again, because they're white, they are reflecting a lot of the sun's solar radiation. Over here we have low albedo, and this means that surfaces are absorbing more of the sun's energy and they're heating up. Okay, so the concrete here is taking in more of the sun's energy and heating up than is being reflected, and water, this is an important thing to remember, water absorbs more of the sun's solar radiation than it reflects. Now, I want you to think yourselves now of anything that you can think of that would have either a high albedo or a low albedo, and just pop it in the comments section and I'll have a look, see if you can see if I can see anybody answering properly, and I'll give you some examples. Now, the next thing I want to show you is a very simple example, okay? A simple example of albedo which you'll remember forever, and that is that if you have a white t-shirt on on a hot sunny day, you actually feel cooler than if you were wearing a dark t-shirt on a sunny day. Have you ever felt that before? The real, like, you can, if you wear a black t-shirt, the sun is glaring onto your back and it feels really hot all of a sudden. So if you can remember that, you can remember that the white t-shirt is reflecting the light and keeps you cool, and the dark t-shirt is making you hotter. So I hope you're still following. I told you it's not too scary. Has anyone put any comments in? I'm going to do a couple of shout outs while we're waiting for some comments, I think. No comments yet, but I'm going to give a shout out to Alice in Milton Keynes. I'm going to say hello to Rosie and Elijah and anyone else that's watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, I'm going to show you now. Okay, let's have a think again about this albedo and why it's important for the cryosphere. Okay, now if you've got, unfortunately the ice is melting because of global heating, and that is heating up our atmosphere and making the ice in the cryosphere melt. Okay, so you've got ice that is already melting, and with less ice you're going to have what's going to be there if there's no ice? Yeah, just water. So you're going to have the sun's solar energy being absorbed more by the water, and then the water is going to heat up and therefore melt more ice. Okay, so what you find is that it's called a feedback loop, and as more ice melts, it means the water gets warmer, and as the water warms, you get more ice melting. So we really need the cryosphere to stay frozen, okay, because otherwise we're just going to get warmer and warmer. So that's one reason that the cryosphere is important. Now, another reason that the cryosphere has huge importance for us is because it keeps the climate of our planet stable. So every year, during the period of time when the sun hits it during the summer, a lot of the sea ice melts. And this happens in both the Arctic and the Antarctic. Now, this cold water is then circulated around through the oceans of the planet. So if we didn't have this cold water coming down to the equator and coming up from the Antarctic, we would find that the oceans near the equator, the tropical oceans, would be a lot warmer. So we really need to have that seasonal melting and cold water being added into our hydrosphere, into our oceans, to cool it down. Okay, so that's another reason. Now the third reason, I didn't give you any examples. Here's some quick examples of albedo. So we've got the playground here is getting very, very hot, so that's got a low albedo. Rainforest has got a low albedo, but that absorbs the energy from the sun to grow. Clouds have got a high one. Ice has got a high albedo, and then buildings, it's very hot sometimes in city centres, so they absorb the sun's energy, but sustainable buildings can actually reflect light off. So sorry about that, that was in the wrong order, but hopefully you've got some good idea there of what albedo is. The third reason that the cryosphere is so important is the amount of fresh water that it holds on its land surface. Did you know that 68% of all the fresh water on Earth, that's an incredible amount, is in the cryosphere? The Antarctic is a huge continent, and the ice sheet covering it is vast and extremely thick. It's literally 2,000 metres in places. That's 2 kilometres thick. Do you remember I said that sometimes the mountain ranges are covered by ice? Well, this is where it is in Antarctica. Now, the ice sheet as well over Greenland is melting at a rapid rate, and if this melts into the oceans, it could cause sea levels to rise by 7 metres. So we really, really need all that water that's in the cryosphere to stay where it is. And the very last reason why the cryosphere is so important is because of a layer of soil that is frozen underground called permafrost. Now, in order for it to be classified as permafrost, it has to be frozen for 2 years without melting. Now, in that permafrost, so under the ground where it's all frozen, you've got frozen water and frozen soil, there are a lot of dead organisms. There's trees, other plants, animals, where they're all frozen. And if that soil was to defrost then two things would happen. Firstly, those animals and plants would start to decay, they'd start to decompose, and that would produce a lot of greenhouse gases. So you'd have a lot of carbon dioxide, a lot of methane going up into the atmosphere and causing more global heating. And permafrost as well holds a lot of water, so a lot of that 68% of water. And if that was to defrost, it would run off into the sea and again cause sea levels to rise. So we don't want that to happen, do we? So that's my main reasons for why the cryosphere is so important to us. And you can see that we really can't do without it, can we? Now I've got one more poll question here. And what I'm hoping is that I've inspired you guys to become scientists, really, Arctic polar scientists. So who here would like to be a polar explorer? Who would like to study the cryosphere? Hopefully a lot of you. Okay, so without the cryosphere, I think we've established that the whole planet would be very different and a lot warmer. Again, let's go back to the global heating. This is endangering our cryosphere and causing it to melt. And this is going to cause many problems, especially for people that live near the coast. So you can see here, this is a lovely coastal town. Everyone's really happy. They're cycling, they've got boats, they've got lovely buildings. And then unfortunately, if the sea levels were to rise, there'd be complete devastation and they wouldn't be able to live there anymore. But there are things that we can do to help. In particular, we need to adapt our lifestyles to live more sustainably. Luckily, we are lucky because there are already many scientists studying the Arctic and the Antarctic regions and trying to unlock its secrets, which will enable us to live more sustainably. They must have such an amazing time on their trips and see the most beautiful wildlife, and the scenery must be awe-inspiring. In fact, the animals that live there are really diverse and exciting and often really cute, like the penguins and walrus. They're some of my favourite. And the narwhal, don't forget, the unicorn of the sea. Now, they all have special adaptations to their frosty environments, and there are some really cool things that you could learn about them. In fact, we have lots of fact sheets on our website that you could look at to find out more about our polar animals. Amazingly, scientists have recently discovered cold water coral reefs in the Arctic Ocean and in the Southern Ocean. Animals prefer to live in the water than on the land. Now, this is mainly because the water is a lot warmer, believe it or not. So the land in Antarctica is often very windy, cold and dry, whereas the water provides much warmer temperatures for them to live in, and they're a lot happier. Now, don't forget about the plants that live in these regions. They're called flora. Most of them are very short because of the cold, harsh winds that prevent them from growing very high. It's called tundra. And because they don't see the sun for much of the year, they don't have very long to grow anyway. Isn't it incredible that life has found a way to survive even in these inhospitable conditions? So let's have a look. How many of us are going to be polar explorers? Oh, yay, more than half of you. So let me just show you the results. That's really exciting, guys. I'm really excited that you want to do that. I would have loved to have done that, gone to Antarctica and studied the animals and the cryosphere. But, you know, we can't do everything. I did other exciting things instead. So just so you know, I want you to have hope about the cryosphere. And I want you to know that there are two really important things that are happening so that things are kept and preserved. And one of them is called the Antarctic Treaty, which is great because this is an agreement between 52 countries that means that the Antarctic will be left as unspoilt and pristine as possible. Any experiments are strictly controlled, and people who stay there must not leave behind any pollution or litter. And the Arctic Council is in the Northern Hemisphere, and this is a group made up of the 8 countries which are found in the Arctic Circle. And they all work together to make sure the natural resources are shared fairly and any disputes can be settled between them. So there's a lot of good work going on to protect these incredible landscapes, and other organisations like the WWF have ongoing projects to protect it as well. So that's really all I wanted to say to you today, but thank you so much for listening. Don't forget you can download our Cryosphere fun book, and you will find experiments and activities there to help you understand more and to help. And you can find out where to download it from our Facebook page. So yeah, great. Thank you guys for watching. I've really enjoyed this morning. I hope you have too. Hope to see you next time, and remember to look after this amazing planet that we call home. Goodbye.